On the 14th of July 1973, 16-year-old Sandra Newton was out clubbing with her boyfriend. It was a Saturday night, but she was last seen after kissing him goodbye and walking home in the village of Britton Ferry. But then she went missing that night, and 3 days later her body was found. She'd been RAPED'd and strangled in a rural location some miles from where she had last been seen. It was said that Sandra Newton had been abducted after trying to hitchhike her way home after the night out. She was subsequently strangled with her own skirt and dumped in a ditch near a coal mine. There was apparently little attempt to hide her body, with it being left at the entrance to a culvert. Police suspected that a local man must have been responsible for her death due to the detailed knowledge of the area. The killer would have needed to have been aware of the remote dump site. 2 months later, in the early hours of Sunday, the 16th of September 1973, Geraldine Hughes and Pauline Floyd, who were both also aged 16, had gone on a night out with friends in Swansea. After attending a nightclub together, the girls headed home, and it was thought that they maybe had hitched a lift home. But the next morning, they were both found dead. Their bodies had been found, RAPED'd and strangled in woodland 5 miles away, and it appeared that one of the girls had attempted to escape her attacker and had made it yards from the road near to where her father worked, but had been caught by the attacker and killed. The murders created a sense of fear and unrest in the community over whether the attacker would strike again. 3 girls were now dead. Would there be more? And although they occurred nearby, at the time of the murders of Geraldine and Pauline, for some reason the police did not link the cases to Sandra Newton. Police soon established that Geraldine and Pauline had been seen getting a lift home in a white Austin 1100 on the night of the disappearance. Now, police followed up on numerous lines of inquiry, but as was the case in police investigations at the time, all intelligence and information was collected on large amounts of paperwork and compiled for the inquiry. The Port Talbot Steelworks employed 13,000 men, all of whom had to be considered as potential suspects. Both the construction of the nearby M4 motorway and the ongoing Neath Fair meant hundreds of workers needed to be considered, as well as the countless strangers these events brought into the area. Detectives attempted to trace men who owned an Austin 1100 in the area, but it meant that more than 10,000 drivers had to be visited and questioned. The 3-day working week imposed by the British government on everyone across the country as a result of the energy shortage, which further reduced the resources of the inquiry and hampered the investigation. However, one of the men who was investigated as part of their inquiries concerning the Austin was Mr. Joseph Kappen, who owned a model vehicle the same as what they were looking for. The police turned up at his home to speak to him. They found his Austin was on bricks in the front garden and the wheels had been removed, with Joseph claiming that he had not committed any of the murders as his car was not roadworthy. However, in the days after the killing, Joseph Kappen's car was logged as being on the road by police carrying out stop and check operations. This would have disproved his claim, but without a computerized system for cross-referencing, this fact was not noticed by detectives at the time. Joseph Kappen also claimed to have been at Neath Fair on the night of the murders, and his wife Christine Powell also gave him an alibi, which he said later was common for her to do when police investigated her husband. Ultimately, therefore, Joseph Kappen was not pursued further as a suspect at that time. Now, in mid-1974, the investigation was scaled down. Joseph Kappen was born in 1941. He had 6 siblings. His parents' marriage broke up when he was young, and he was raised by his stepfather in Port Talbot, a heavily industrial town in Wales dominated by its large steelworks. Joseph Kappen began attracting police's attention for petty offences by the age of 12. He went on to accumulate over 30 convictions for car theft. petrol theft, burglary and assault, and spent years in and out of prison. Joseph alternatively worked as a lorry driver or a bus driver, and then as a bouncer. He never stayed in employment for long and was described as a loner. Now, in 1962, Joseph Kappen met his first wife, 17-year-old Christine Powell, and they married in February 1964. But 10 days after their nuptials, Joseph was sent to prison for burglary. Christine then gave birth to a daughter and a son, stating that she'd been RAPED'd by Joseph after his release from prison. Christine later testified that Joseph was physically abusive towards her and would RAP her every 2 weeks. At one point, he fatally strangled the family dog in front of his own son while walking on a nearby beach just because, he said, it's too old. Joseph was known to regularly pursue local teenage girls during his marriage to Christine, with his jobs as a bouncer giving him an opportunity to interact with them. When working as a bus driver, he was also known to use the rest breaks to approach teenage girls on the village green. In 1964, Joseph attempted to force himself on a 15-year-old schoolgirl in the Sandfields housing estate, but she escaped. And in February 1973, a man resembling Joseph Kappen picked up 2 female hitchhikers and drove them to a nearby isolated road before attempting to RAP both of them, but they both managed to escape. Now, the victims did not report the incident as one thought she would get in trouble with her father. Police hoped that advances in DNA testing would help solve the murders. And in 1998, there was a significant development when a profile of the killer's DNA was isolated via testing on the clothing of the 2 girls. And in 2000, the profile was uploaded to the DNA database to see if it matched any person arrested or charged since 1995. The year in which the DNA started to be taken, no match was made. However, the developments in DNA led to a full reinvestigation into the 2 murders, titled Operation Magnum. In January 2001, the murders were reconstructed on BBC One's Crime Watch, and around this time there was media speculation linking serial killer Fred West to the murders as he had once worked in that area, but this was swiftly ruled out by police after the DNA was checked. 35,000 persons of interest were initially identified for DNA testing, but a psychological profiler was employed to reduce the number to a priority list of 500. 50 of these were witnesses, relatives or victims, stepfathers, boyfriends and anyone who had featured prominently in the initial investigation, and the others were known criminal suspects. Joseph was listed as suspect number 200, and detectives visited what they believed to be his address in Port Talbot in August 2001, but they discovered that Joseph had died of lung cancer back in 1990. Although his former wife Christine Powell, who had divorced him in 1980, still lived in the house. 2 months later, testing on the clothes of Sandra Newton revealed she'd been a victim of the same killer as the 2 girls, Geraldine and Pauline, meaning that the 3 murders were now officially linked for the first time, revealing that they'd all been murdered by the same unidentified individual. Now, due to a period of time that had elapsed since the murders, South Wales Police decided to employ a previously unknown tactic of searching for the DNA of possible living descendants of the murderer, as their genetic profiles would be similar to the killer's. 50% of the individual's DNA is inherited from each parent. So investigators believed that they could discover who the killer was by making a partial match between the killer's profile and that of any children that they may have had. Investigators therefore examined local individuals' profiles and matched part of the killer's profile and created a list of 100 potential suspects. One of these was local car thief Paul Kappen, the son of Joseph Kappen. He seemed to have taken on his father's previous life by also having crimes for car theft. His DNA was already on police files, but who was only 7 years of age at the time of the murders. Paul's profile showed a distinctive similarity to the killer's, prompting police to make his deceased father Joseph, known to have been investigated in the original inquiry, as their prime suspect. The findings of the DNA testing led detectives to apply to the Home Secretary, David Blunkett, to exhume Joseph Kappen's body in order to confirm through DNA that he was the murderer, which was granted. And in 2002, the body was exhumed from the cemetery on the outskirts of Port Talbot, with it being said by witnesses that a thunderstorm suddenly passed over as they exhumed his body, and a thunderclap was heard as they dug him up, suggesting that they had unearthed evil. Joseph Kappen's family consistently denied that he could not have been responsible for the murders and claimed he was innocent despite the evidence. Forensic testing on Joseph Kappen's remains subsequently established a perfect match to the murderer's sample, finally proving beyond a doubt that Joseph Kappen took to his grave the murders of 3 young girls. South Wales Police declared the case closed. The now elderly surviving parents of the victims expressed relief that they had finally received a form of closure, with the mother of one of the girls saying, "Now we can close the book on that hell forever." After the finding, Joseph Kappen's ex-wife Christine Powell, who had previously insisted that he was innocent, stated that our thoughts are with the families and the victims. Our concerns are protection from hurt for our children, and we are deeply shocked by the revelations. The Joseph Kappen investigation was the first in the world to use familial DNA tracing in order to identify a serial killer and to solve a previously unsolved murder with familial DNA. Joseph Kappen is also considered the first documented serial killer in Welsh history. The outcome of the case created hopes of solving other unsolved historical murders through DNA testing,